My name is Curtis Sasaki. I'm part of SSIC. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today, Isaiah Kacyvenski. This is his second time to Samsung, so we know the first time he spoke here was super inspirational for a lot of folks. This time we're going to feature and talk more about his second life beyond the NFL. Just to give you a little bit of background about Isaiah, for those of you who don't know, he actually earned 2 degrees from Harvard. He has a pre-med degree, as well as he earned his MBA from Harvard Business School. He played in the NFL for 8 years. First, where I grew up, he actually played for the Seattle Seahawks. I remember watching NFL games when the Seahawks played the Oakland Raiders, and I always was jealous because everybody in Oakland was wearing tank tops when I was in Seattle, bundled up trying to stay warm and dry. But Isaiah also mentioned he did join the black and silver to end his career, the Oakland Raiders. I'm sure he has some interesting stories about the Raiders, Raider Nation.
None I can talk about.
Isaiah is currently the founder and principal at Athletes Technology Capital. It's a venture capital and growth equity investment fund focused on sports technology. Very large and growing marketplace. Prior, he was at Athletes Technology Capital. He was also the managing partner at Blue Star Innovation Partners, an investment capital fund led by serial entrepreneurs and expert operators across a variety of verticals. He has a long history in really working with startup companies. He's an entrepreneur, so I'd like to welcome Isaiah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I can have Isaiah fill in some of the blanks. A brief about his background, but maybe before he does that, one of the things I found out is he actually was on Oprah. And I was going to ask him, was it harder to play in the Super Bowl or be on Oprah? And
you want me to kick off with that question?
Your choice.
That's a good one. Well, thanks for having me, Curtis. That was a really good introduction, and great to be back here again this year. I'll start with a question first. I would say it was definitely harder to play at the Super Bowl. Having worked from about 9 years old on, but the Oprah Winfrey appearance and experience was amazing. It was pretty special, and it meant a lot to me. Kind of growing up, having a pretty tough childhood, and fighting through that, and really having a coming together of my family and my father in particular. Kind of after the passing of my mom, so it was a great kind of healing story. And amazing. I remember being unbelievably nervous for that, though, which is, I know, the core of your question, but not quite as nervous as I was for the game. But when the ball was kicked in the Super Bowl, I remember having this overwhelming peace, and just feeling that I was in the right place. It was it was one of those really, really calm moments in the midst of a lot of chaos. That was really cool. But there's not much to add on the introduction. My backup plan, if I didn't play in the NFL, was to be a doctor, and fulfilled those requirements when I was at Harvard undergrad. Did not have much time to do anything else other than football and school. And work, I held 4 different jobs. I was a bouncer at a bar for 2 different bars that were at and Harvard's campus as well. So I stayed unbelievably busy, stayed in a lot of weekends to be able to do that. But I think how I looked at the world, especially even as a player from early on, was through the lens of trying to take guesswork how I felt and how I could feel good, from hydration to sleep to recovering from injury, whatever it may be, to just overtraining or undertraining, trying to take all that guesswork out of how I could perform with pen and paper, though, without technology.
Right.
Having that, especially where it was, and my passion for kind of human physiology and really led to a variety of different pieces, but really during my time, both as a player in college as well as in the NFL, tried to take out as much guesswork as I could, and that was the real core of kind of some of the background. But that was kind of
Okay.
a little known fact. I was drafted before Tom Brady.
Ooh.
In the same draft as Tom Brady, I was 119th pick overall. I think he was like 199. That's like a little known fact. Guess he's doing better now.
I guess you are. One of the things I saw in one of your previous interviews was a sign, and it said, "Let no one outwork you today." And I can understand how, as an elite athlete, that applies. But you're an investor, you're an entrepreneur. Do you follow that today?
Yeah, absolutely. I made that sign. I was 14 years old, and I grew up in poverty, was homeless parts of my childhood, didn't have a lot of direction. And I remember I had this epiphany moment in my childhood when I was 14. And I remember waking up the next day and felt like I had an entirely new lease on life, that I could control my life from that day forward, and I made that sign. And that sign said, "Let no one outwork you." I put it above my bed as I looked at it every single morning waking up. And I really haven't stopped since I was 14 years old until now. It's taken on a bunch of different forms. But in the end, it's really the core of that sign was just being tireless. But being tireless, and I feel this way as well, but being tireless is not just good enough on its own. When you're passionate about something, it does not feel like work, whatever you do from the day to day, and you're driven towards some type of goal. And I've always tried to feed that passion in a variety of different ways. And that didn't stop when I was a player. And I really have attacked both investing as well as being an entrepreneur, trying to drive that passion and doing the kind of hard introspective work it takes to find out what I could be passionate about, right? Because I couldn't hit people anymore. And that's not the only thing I loved about the game, to simplify it, but I love the adrenaline aspects of the game. I love the strategy thinking. There's a whole other side to the game, the preparation. I love that aspect of it, and I had to translate that over. And it absolutely does translate over into the business world. And I really look at business as a sport for myself. I use that line a lot when I go back and talk to a bunch of players. It's the same thing. You just have to take on a different form.
One of the things about being a successful investor is being able to not only figure out technology that's coming, but also really understanding the CEOs and sort of the executive teams that you invest in. Mm-hmm. Are there things that you look at in terms of CEO qualities, the senior staff qualities that makes the difference between investing or not investing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've developed over the year. I've made a list of aspects around what I would find as appealing investments, and put together this kind of proprietary risk criteria you go through. All that kind of put to the side, what I weight most heavily is the ability to understand the founder, the CEO, what makes them tick. Are they willing to, and I spend a lot of time getting to know them really, really well. And I want them to have so much conviction on this idea. The rest of the world is crazy not to not understand them. And I want them to be able to convey that over time. And sometimes that doesn't come over in one conversation, especially on differences in personality. But the ability to convey that as well as persevere is something that's really, really important. I would probably say I weight that above everything else. You are going to get knocked down. How are you going to react over and over and over and over and over and be relentless on that aspect? So I think a lot of those qualities that I really held up to myself when I was a kid and still try to do, I try to really find those aspects in the entrepreneurs as well. And that, I'm telling you, that is very hard to quantify. So for me, it's just I have to sit and I have to get to know. I have to spend a lot of time with them over some amount of time, get to know what makes them tick. And hopefully, I have certain questions that I ask across the board that I want to see. It's interesting to see how they answer, but okay. Anyway, it's a very good question.
So You talk to literally thousands of companies, some of which you invested in, especially in the sports area, in the health area. Are there trends you're seeing now that really could be profound in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are several, and I tend to look at sports, and I kind of already alluded to this too, but I tend to look at sports as a test bed to really not stay in the market it's at, but to really flow into large adjacent markets. Sports by itself is fine, but what's that a test bed? What can that be a petri dish for other things? And I think one of the the largest opportunities that we're still at infancy is this idea and this relationship between, the quantified athlete, understanding almost every single aspect of how you looked at your own physiology, as we all are unique, and that's physiology across the board. I can dive into that more, but kind of that relationship of human performance and the relationship between that quantified athlete to quantified self, and taking guesswork how we all can feel good is not just an elite athlete problem. Now, they could be very motivated to feel their best come game day, and they should want to take out, and technology playing a major role in taking out a lot of that guesswork around that. But in the end, that's a human performance interconnected story that we all want to feel good. And that is something that is a huge opportunity. It's got a bunch of hurdles in the way to realize that. But in the end, I think of almost every single aspect of quantifying is creating feedback loops for a variety of different measures on the human body that really help us optimize how we feel every day. And you start to understand where you can start to recreate events that make you feel good again, and take guesswork out of it and map to a prescriptive plan to feel good. And that should be a very motivating force for all of us. And the plans could be absolutely different for how we're built, our genetic makeup, to how we live our life, to other environmental aspects as well that could affect. But all of those data points need to be gathered, because without it, we're just guessing.
Okay. I know you were involved in a wearable company at one point in your career. Mm-hmm. Samsung, we make watches as well, wearables. There's a lot of startups doing different kinds of wearable technologies, from in-ear to something to wear around your chest. One of the challenges, though, that I think as an industry we have is getting people to always wear it. Mm-hmm. What are factors you think that's holding that back, versus it 90 days after being thrown in a drawer somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy question. And, if anyone could solve that right now, they would. I personally think that's an engagement issue, right? The reason you put something away and don't wear it anymore, when you feel like you're not engaged, and why do you feel engaged? Maybe you haven't learned, or maybe there are not some changes that you see, or some other reason where you're not benefiting, you're not incentivized to be able to use it. So I look all the way down to the core, and there's different reasons why people would want to wear electronics on body. And some of those could be somewhat nebulous, other than, hey, I want a general understanding of how I live my day. But where I see the world changing and where I see engagement changing is if you look at the quality of the actual raw data being captured, the actual physiology, and a larger suite of metrics to gather from. And really taught from early on in my career is the ability to democratize that, what you can gather in a controlled setting, laboratory setting, democratizing that through miniaturization of electronics, and comparing that high quality data in the lab to capturing almost as high a quality data in the wild as we live our life. You then have an apples to apples comparison rather than an apples to oranges comparison. And there's ways to then incentivize, and there's a belief in the quality data that you can actually start to create metrics that we haven't even thought of yet, or the ability to capture data that maybe is benchmark and gold standard, but we never thought was possible outside of 12 lead ECG.
Do you think people will have like multiple devices on them to monitor different parts of their anatomy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends. So that would highly depend on what type of physiology, what type of metric you're trying to look at. For example, if you look at muscle activity, it's got to be very, it's got to be located on the actual muscle. You want to look at the electrical connectivity across that area. I think the catch-all would be one device that you put on, you forget about it. There are challenges that the world knows of gathering from just one location. The ability to, and having seen this, the ability to time synchronize across multiple locations gives an amazing amount of insight into not only kind of human performance, but really where I spend a lot of time as well is quantifying disease state, right? The ability to start to look at, as well as kind of this true realization of quantifying disease state as it extends into medicine as well. So you look at the kind of precision medicine as defined as a space, right? The ability to have highly accurate data capture that is even more than just single location based is really important as well. And when that quality, I even go back to kind of the other point, when that quality of data can increase, the ability for the algorithms then kind of filtering that information allows it to have that apples-to-apples comparison.
Yeah, I think you're on a bring up a good point about quality of data, because we see really interesting startups doing amazing things with AI now. Mm-hmm. So one startup is using AI to actually scan MRIs and literally in 15 minutes give a diagnostic, right?
Yeah.
Stanford is doing research using AI where they take your smartphone, they take a picture of your skin, and will tell you one of 2,000 different diseases you might have.
Yep.
Are you looking at companies using data in similar ways, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so first, obviously it all starts with data, and the better quality of data, that kind of, as I was alluding to earlier, the better quality of data, the better insight on the other end, and the larger the data set, period, across the larger population, is also important as well. Sorry, I was cutting that off. Is also important as well. So, I've thought long and hard about that in a variety of different other ways, where from looking at each individual, I've done deep dives in, say, like precision nutrition space, which is kind of like a sub-segment, right, where we're all built differently. We all have different nutritional sensitivities. The ability to then deliver directly nutritional capabilities to me, the end customer, is actually really important. And being able to do that with massive amount of data sets across the board, from blood tests to gut microbiome mapping to delivery of all different types of nutritional capabilities to me, really important. And that space is going to be flush with massive amounts of data. And yeah, I'll extend that now. I'm not to drone on, but that is also going to be a very, very significant portion as betting becomes legalized in the United States. Those aspects and the ability to track more and more types of information on in-game play across the board, if you talk about sports betting across the board, is going to be relevant just for there. And it's already relevant now, and kind of if you look at kind of fantasy play and everything else around that. So those are kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum, but obviously two very relevant cases that all start with data.
Good. Moving from a star NFL player to a technology person, I know a lot of people try to find mentors to learn from. Did you have a mentor to help you move into the investment area, technology area?
Yeah, no, I did. I had a bunch of really great people around me to help me, first to transition from the NFL to what else, I was 31 when I retired. What else did I want to do? What else did I want to point and find that passion towards? And, really, like I said earlier, did a lot of introspective aspects of just looking at what drove me and what that looks like. Was able to, the first company I was at, a company called MC10, the scientific co-founder of that company is a material scientist, one of the world's top material scientists, John Rogers, and has been a mentor for me since I joined them. And he's now has one of the world's largest material science labs. He's got 60 postdocs in his lab at Northwestern. He's got a center for biointegrated electronics there. And has really helped me. He was very unique in, I could talk a lot about him, but he was very unique in how he looked at his research. And he did not follow this kind of wandering path of looking at wherever the research took him. He always wanted to stay in the bounds of how could this make difference in lives? How could this make a difference in some end users, whatever that would be? And that was very unique on how he looked, and he set a pretty strict paradigm in how he approached that. The other piece was really having targets to shoot for, especially around human physiology, but gold standards to shoot for, to then democratize, which you've already heard me talk about today. But he absolutely instilled that in me from one of the first times I've ever met him until now, where there is no snake oil, there is no fudging. Either you hit the mark or you don't. If you don't hit the mark, how close can you come to that mark, and how close can you come to that gold standard?
Okay. Recently, we had Mark Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress about privacy and data and all of that. I remember a couple years ago working with Nike, and they were doing smart clothes that had sensors so you could detect, perspiration, sweat, hydration levels to heart rate. And there was talk about, putting that on athletes during not only practices, but potentially even in games. Is there a philosophy in terms of data collection and privacy in sports?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very touchy subject. I think there is a huge amount that we can learn, going back to that kind of human performance theme. And even taking a step back where I think everybody's mind automatically drifts towards during a game, but if you think about all of the massive amount of work is put into actually preparing so you actually look good in the game is in practice, and the ability to capture that data and take guesswork out leading up to that point adds a massive amount of value to if you look at it from a player's perspective. Is huge, right? I always looked at my body as a business when I played, and I wanted to, without letting that take over the entire aspects of it, I wanted to make sure that came through and allowed myself to put myself in the best position to play as long as I could, make a good living while I did it, and perform better, right? And all those kind of things in hand. I think there's aspects of that have to really have it coming together from a league side and then the player's side. So there's a way to monetize that where it's not just, there is benefits that are real from the human performance side, but there's actually other benefits from fantasy sports to just digital media engagement to other aspects that could really create a win-win as well around that. But I think it's really going to not come kind of lopsided from one side, but it's coming together of both the players and the leagues coming together. And not necessarily starting in, and you're already starting to see this, by the way, you're not starting in a tier one sport like NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, but starting in kind of a tier three or tier two sport, and showing that there is actually real value and engagement to be realized there, and then brought up to the big leagues in a variety of ways. And I think you'll start to see real big changes in a variety of ways, similar to how when fantasy sports were first introduced. It was an explosive growth around that. I think you're going to be able to see this next wave of explosion around new sets of data collection, not only from on-body physiology, but location, everything else, all really quantified and in the end analyzed through a variety of different engines that you can look at that would be deemed artificial intelligence, right?
Okay. You're in the building now with that. A lot of the folks in the audience probably are working on different technology areas, from memory to maybe SoCs to display technologies. We make sort of the brains, but not the final product.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's other Samsung groups who make final end consumer products. Are there trends you see happening in either sports or in health that could potentially our engineers should think about? What are things that might really create the next breakthroughs?
Yeah, I think the ability for the quality of many components coming together in different form factors, I think is kind of one of the things you're going to start to see a massive growth. I know you guys have done a lot around that, but the ability to repackage rather than just with kind of rigid and brittle electronics, but different form factors, obviously that I've been exposed to. I think you're already starting to see and I know you guys spend a lot of time working on the ability to extend battery life. So longer battery, the Holy Grail is right. Longer battery with wafer thin, form
big
factor
challenge.
as well. Yeah, very, very big challenge. As well as then having by the way, we have X amount of suite of sensors and that sensing capability that is kind of leads to the last piece is the quality of sensors. I'm preaching to the choir again here, but the quality of this sensors and the sensing capability is continuing to impress and really deliver on that value proposition of having the apples to apples comparison, the quality of that data. Where you gather it as well, the ability as you move away from the wrist or you move away from some straps, the potential for adhesive capability on skin is not trivial, and that's something I'll always keep in mind. Again, I know that's probably something that's first and foremost here as well, but having experienced that in a variety of different ways, the ability to also put electronics on and just forget you even have them on is quite an amazing experience. And for days at a time as well, the ability to think about electronics in a different way, which is also this idea of, again, probably reaching a choir here as well, but the idea of single-use applications for, versus a durable use, long lifetime applications of electronics as well. The ability to have those single use for X period of days to then dispose of after is also very, very interesting as well. And I see a lot of pushes and use cases for that. Some of those that are deep into some kind of high intensity sports, but also kind of deep into quantifying different aspects of kind of conditions on the digital health side, conditions that have been very, very difficult. I think everybody refers to like the Holter monitor as kind of a prime target. To be able to do that, and I think that day is fast approaching on being able to capture very high quality data without massive clunk on you.
So maybe you can tell us what your latest initiative is.
From my time as a player to where I'm at now, I started investing as a player my third year in the NFL. I didn't have any, when I say any, I didn't have any economics background at all. I was a pure science guy. But for the first time, I was handed a check in 2000, not having any money in my entire life. I was handed a signing bonus, and I was like, holy crap, I better learn what to do here. And had heard horror stories of guys that had played in the NFL or in professional sports not being able to do it. So went head first, learned everything I could, hired a financial advisor, peppered the crap out of him, and asked him every single thing I could about the public and private markets. Went through, I couldn't learn anymore. I hired another financial advisor, did the same thing, and learned as much as I could. And made my first investment when I was my third year in the NFL. And my first investment is exactly what they tell you not to do as a player. They say, don't invest in friends and don't invest in restaurants.
I heard restaurants is not a good one.
and I did both with one investment. And ended up being a really, really successful investment. And it was a classmate of mine from Harvard that started a farm-to-market healthy fast food concept before farm-to-market was actually a thing. And this was in 2003, right? So it was very much ahead of its time. Healthy fast food type of capability, but it's done extremely well over time. But I was able to learn a lot early on and I spent the off seasons shadowing him, of understanding. He's unbelievably smart. We played football together at Harvard. It was unbelievably just a great entrepreneur to learn from, just because he would be out in the docks, picking out, in the farm stands, picking out the vegetables and the fruit, 4 a.m. Let me tag along with him. Just an amazing guy. Anthony Eccles, the guy's name. And I was able in the off seasons to shadow him and tag along and understand what it took to build everything you need to do as an entrepreneur and learn. I'll fast forward that. I've now I've expanded obviously from the restaurant industry. That was my only restaurant. But continued to believe in friends that were really talented, as well as kind of expand the network. But I've now made on my angel investing side, made over 25 investments in tech and in biotech, and continued down that path of feeding curiosity and learning, and wanting to learn more and meet more. And that was one of the drivers that kind of led to realizing that maybe I didn't have to go. I still had this passion for human physiology, but not having to go to medical school when I retired. And had that experience at MC10, was there for 6 years, but saw the world coming together, and much like I'm talking now, where I saw through the lens of sports, being able to open up large markets, decided to start and founded the Sports Innovation Lab with two co-founders, Josh Walker and Angela Ruggiero, and built that as a information flow, a way to map the entire landscape. That Gartner or Forrester model did not exist in the sports technology landscape at all, and say, hey, let's understand how this mobilization of global resources looks. Building that with knowing that would be a information arm to then invest against. So information to invest as a first step, as a means to an end, which is where I'm at now with this Athletes Technology Capital. Understanding, having a massive software platform, this Sports Innovation Lab really kind of helped redefine how we look at research as well, which is, kind of the old school research has always been like, hey, let's write some trend reports, throw them over the wall, and that's outdated in about a month, and especially in the technology space. This is a living, breathing software platform that has built-in updates across the board, but mapping globally what sports technology, again, defined broadly, means across the board. And this covers, I'm telling you, everything from IoT as an extension of smart venues and connected stadiums, from the quantified athlete to quantified self aspect, to immersive media, VR, AR, OTT, linear cable being cut, to esports as it intersects with traditional sports. I can keep going on and on. Quantifying sponsorship. You look at the amount of dollars being spent on sponsorship every single year, but not really having an understanding of why those dollars are spent or how much value you actually get for them. The test bed really is sports, but the ability to expand into massive markets, solving that is also other aspects. So having those different segments and trends really, really defined, as well as having a large group of large companies, leagues, you name it, as clients as well, to understand what the needs were on the other side as well and what they were going to find valuable. across the board, from nutrition companies to technology companies to leagues, starting to see and clarify a large point of view, but the ability to then pull that all together and say, all right, having met with the companies, having know the space really well, having been embedded, it's time. And there's been a large amount of venture investing also in this space, but not a ton of operating partners to help carry it from the chasm of venture to growth equity, really, and as well. So focused on Athletes Technology Capital, on stage agnostic on the investing side, but really the power zone of those growth equity, those investments that are ready to expand into other markets as well. So
good. One of the things we were chatting earlier about is it seems like we're at a stage now that a lot of athletes are getting into learning about startups, doing investing. I mean, I saw on news, Andre Iguodala and Steph Curry, they're sponsoring their own forums now.
Yep.
Is this a trend that's happening, and why now?
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's real, and you'll hear about kind of superstars like a Kobe Bryant, like a Steph Curry, like an Andre Iguodala, like a Carmelo Anthony. Yeah. There are a lot of athletes that some aren't superstars. I was Joey Bag of Donuts player as well. When I played, I was kind of doing it on the other side. I was definitely. It was not a regular thing to do. Kind of what I started to do. Usually, athletes are used to just incoming requests for dollars. Like that's just that you get peppered nonstop.
Yeah.
I think kind of the forward-leaning, I want to learn more and understand how to actually make direct investments because I see opportunity here. You've really seen an explosion of that over the last 5 years in a variety of different sports. It's been impressive. I would say it's definitely self-selecting as well. But it's also this dance of, because someone always asks something of athletes, there isn't necessarily someone around the athlete that says, you can come and learn without having to write $1 million check or be able to do that. So it's kind of a delicate balance around there, but more and more, and one of the things, even creating the Athletes Technology Capital, is zero ask for the athletes that want to be involved with the venture and private equity investments that we want. If they want to be just at the table and not have to invest any dollars, they absolutely can. There's zero requirement. But the ability to have an investment thesis where their point of view should be heard, but very rarely ever heard, along with the academic experts as well as industry experts, all those people coming together at one side is really kind of helping to feed that curiosity where people don't realize, like, those athletes actually want to learn from the LeBron James of nutrition. They want to learn from the Tom Brady of orthopedic surgery. You can go down the list. There's this level of respect and understanding. Like there is this information flow on both sides that's creating an environment around that.
One of the things I was going to ask you too is, do you think sports technology is evolved because of health technology, or does health technology evolve because of sports technology, or is it both?
That's a really hard question. Like where I started today, which is like, it should make sense that elite athletes are very motivated to want to get the most out of their bodies. Like that should make sense to a lot of people. Is that always the case? No, but it should be. And quite honestly, I think my experience in where things are, it is, because there's so much at stake. That people are kind of coming around to that almost across the board. So there's a case to be made of, all right, sports technology is leading that. Another data point, I'm sure a lot of people in here know, which is like, if you've seen studies around people with, maybe some of the most morbid disease states and should be some of the most motivated to want to get better or kind of measure ways to get better, are sometimes those that are least compliant of wanting to do that, but in a lot of ways they should be the most motivated. I think it's an interesting data point as well that kind of leads, and also kind of a nod to on the sports side, which is those that are most motivated. If you can do this the right way, which is where it's going to go, where you can have a prescriptive way of this. You do this, you increase you have a very high probability of feeling good. You sleep like this, you hydrate like this, you do this, and not guess. Like literally just saying, I sort of know, but maybe you don't. If I do this, it's fine. No, you actually follow a very comprehensive plan to be able to do this. You can highly increase your probability to feel good. I think people that athletes are going to obviously resonate that with, but like people can relate to that too. It's like,
okay,
all right, good. I have something to shoot for,
right.
And you're taking a lot of the fluff away from saying, well, I sort of know I shouldn't drink, a bottle of wine, or being able to dial in almost every single aspect, as well as other aspects of your life, like just how you consume daily life and how you look at different patterns, from sleep patterns and hydration to consumption period.
Yeah, I mean, my example was I have irregular heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wear a wearable, but my wearable didn't tell me, hey, you should go visit your doctor.
Yeah.
But I did because I recognized it. So then I had to wear for 31 straight days, even in the shower. Yeah. Very difficult. This heart rate monitor on my chest. And but I wouldn't have known unless, because my devices never told me. I had to kind of figure it out myself still. I mean, do you think we'll get to a point where the technology is going to be reliable enough, timely enough, where I don't have to be the one making that decision? It's going to actually recommend it for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like literally, that's a great example, and it's the core of every single thing I'm talking about right now, which is the inability to accurately measure leaves guesswork to be there, but you have highly accurate data points that lead up to, as well as that are tangential and comprehensive, even around just, kind of full lead ECG, full waveform ECG. There's other aspects around that too. So you start looking at massive computing power around subtleties that exist around episodes. I can't pick that out with the naked eye. The most talented doctor in the world might not be able to pick it out with the naked eye, but you start to see patterns that exist, right? Pattern matching exists that bring that on. And the ability to avoid those is what you'd probably want to do at all costs. I'm not saying that's exactly but that's where it should go. Much like you would want to optimize for how you feel, you'd want to avoid negative sequences of events and kind of the things that lead up to them, or the situations that are there that it's essentially still guesswork on over time. It's just guesswork now, but over time you start to weed in what are actually important data points and what aren't. But that just comes with not out the gate saying, hey, this is exactly what it is, but you have to collect to then tell a story, and collect it again, tell a story, and then in the end prescribe.
Yeah. Obviously the biggest challenge with the technology company getting into the health space is liability. So the companies that you talk to, how do they think about the liability aspect of misdiagnostics or making wrong recommendations? I mean, we think about it a lot because we're a pretty big global company.
Yeah, I mean that's another side of it that. In the end, you have to, they're in there, the line is drawn, and you have regulated and unregulated devices, right? So in a lot of ways, not only kind of how those are designed, but how they're even talked about are completely different. And there's very clear lines on what you can and can't do, right? And everyone in this room knows that. But the ability and the quality of sensors, like even going back to that point, on the unregulated side are getting just as good, just maybe not even talked about on the other side as well. But the misdiagnosis aspect, I mean, even talking in terms like that is a little bit of a misnomer, which on the unregulated side, you absolutely wouldn't say that as well. So there will be a fine line. I mean, digital health is a massive area of gray in a lot of different ways. But the fact is if you have helpful data points that help you in the end head off catastrophe, there's massive amount of saving on the entire healthcare system. If you look at, from heart disease to the diabetes, catastrophe strikes, and those are massive, massive sucks on the entire healthcare system, not just here, but globally, right? So, and there's warning signs that lead up and those are just two examples, but there's warning signs that lead up that we are not capturing. It's, you can't improve what you can't measure, and you can't take this proactive approach instead of reactive approach unless your ability to gather. So hopefully this fear of misinterpreting is probably the best way to put it, misinterpreting,
right.
or being a little more cautious around some type of reading could be a little more kind of hypersensitive to it, but I don't think bad.
Okay. Audience questions?
You mentioned AR, VR. Of course, Samsung's a lot into that. And we had a speaker from Stanford who talked about at Stanford their quarterbacks using AR, VR. Do you see that growing in the NFL too?
Absolutely. I'd say really, really good point to raise, because that's one of the markets I see that's going to expand. Yeah, I think as someone, I've had 11 surgeries on my body, and I was like a classic overtrainer. When I ever thought there was guesswork, did I put enough work in? I'm going to go out and do more. I'm going to go out and do more. The ability to limit that and stay what you'd say is optimized or fresh is really important. But what you do is you limit your pattern recognition ability, right? All sports, and there's a lot of other things, but it's all about pattern recognition quickly. And I was a linebacker, I was on defense, and you had to be able to recognize things very, very quickly. And I watched ridiculous amount of film every single day. The ability to immerse yourself in that same type of setting where the pattern recognition comes even easier without the physical toll on body, huge. It's absolutely massive. And to do it in any type of setting that you want is great. I mean, it directly speaks to every single aspect. Is if you're serious about wanting to be the best and optimize your performance, why would you not do that? As many times as you possibly could. And still, you'll find people that don't. But the fact is that becomes more and more ubiquitous across the board. You're going to start to see a massive growth in that. So it's an awesome question.
My name is Eugene Chen. I work for R&D. So I have a simple question. So when you are like an entrepreneur, you have to worry about funding, like you have to raise funds. But then when you are investor, VC, you have to give out funding. So in this process of transitioning, do you have to use your own money or leverage other people's money?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I've got my own personal kind of portfolio. When I mentioned kind of my angel portfolio, that's all my personal money that I've invested in over the years. Even in, kind of as you draw the line between kind of operator, investor, and then kind of, I'll throw entrepreneur in with the operator aspect of it as well. Obviously that gets the potential to be able to put own money in, which I've done in companies that started as well, and then also on the other side of that as well, on the investor side, was your question on as I continue to grow the fund where I'm at right now, that will be what would be called institutional money with investors, limited partners that would come in and invest in the fund, and then that's deployed. So from strategic investors to other people investing in this thesis of the fund. Is that clear?
One minor question. For angel funds, like what amount are we talking about? Millions or hundreds of thousands?
So kind of the stuff I've done in the past all the way up to this point is as angel I've seen it range from 25,000 to that can range all the way up to 2 to 3 to 4 million. Not personal checks for myself. I would say my sweet spot's been anywhere from $25,000 to like 500,000 in that range across the board. And most likely I usually also advise companies as well. And on the fund, which is kind of the institutional side, you have a range that is stage agnostic, but focused on from $250,000 checks all the way up to $10 million checks as well. So the ability obviously depends on how you assess risk and kind of the stage of the company as well, ready for a variety of things, but profitability becoming one of those key factors on injection of capital. So higher risk earlier on, which is fairly obvious, but the ability to then pick the ones that are poised for growth as well.
Hi, I have a few questions, not really about business, about yourself. I read online your biography, pretty encouraging story from your early life to nowadays, right? So of course you go through NFL and Harvard and MBA, right? So that's
the Stanford of the East.
Not Stanford will be easy, all right?
No, the
Closer,
Stanford of the
right?
East.
49er, right? So about your story, pick up 49, there's a story inside of it, right? So I read about this. I'd like to know something about yourself, and if you want to talk about your belief or something back in your mind or in the back, because in your early life look like some struggling or something, not that easy, right? So how you go through all this, and what is encouraging you doing this? And if you have a family or kids, what you want to say, from their teen to a young adult, what you want to say to them? Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a great question. I would say my mother, who is just an amazing woman, she passed away when I was a senior in high school, and she got hit by a truck. And my mother we didn't have an amazing childhood life, everything else, but my mom showered us with a ridiculous amount of love. And my mom was just overwhelmingly just a ridiculously positive person. And she injected that, I was the youngest of 5 kids, but she injected that really into all of us. And I remember feeling rich in that when we weren't rich with anything else, and knowing that there's something better out there. And my mom wasn't educated at all. She had failed like 3 grades going out, so she was 3 grades behind herself. She barely graduated high school. But my mother was a huge believer in this power of kind of positive thinking and the ability to affect change in people's lives and be compassionate. And she sat us down at a very young age, and we didn't have a TV or anything. We had a record player. And she used to sit us down, and we listened to Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, and we used to listen to it once a week. We used to sit down, huddle together. Unbelievably powerful experience from an early age to understanding a couple of things, which is there's a lot of people in this world that are hurting, and to understand their plight and their situation took me out of my own situation and helped me, and which is why I think was the true kind of learning and teaching experience that she brought to us to be able to do that. But it put me in the right mindset also at a very young age to where this country, the United States, the ability to define what I wanted to do with the rest of my life was not left up really to anyone else other than myself. And I think realizing how lucky I was and how special that was at a pretty young age, where I could literally define what I want to do, define what type of person I wanted to be. Might not be perfect on getting there, but I think kind of this blend of like being really, really positive and realizing that this is a huge opportunity that I wanted to give everything I had to doing it. And knowing that I didn't want my family to grow up, like I did, kind of having to worry about where your next meal was coming from, or being made fun of at school for wearing the same clothes in every single day of the week. Knowing I wanted more than that. But to your last question, teaching that to my kids is I'm sure a lot of people out here have kids. They grew up, and they are growing up. They're 14 and 12 now. They've grown up a lot differently than I have, And the ability though, but really helping them understand where you are not defined by whatever circumstance you're in. You define by the path that you want to go after, and really having those, like my kids, Isaiah Jr. and Liliana, have them understand and appreciate the path that I took to help them live the life they do, but also help them realize that they're their own person to be able to start and do whatever they want to as well. It takes daily reminder as a parent. Sure we all can understand that here for that as well. But it's a really good question. It's a very multi-tiered and layered question too. But hopefully I can talk to you more about it. But
Any of your kids play sports?
Yeah. My sons loves basketball, baseball, and plays some football. But I would not say it's going to be his sport that his mom's going to let him play it for forever. And he's a golfer too. And my daughter is a gymnast and diver. So gymnast, diving, and track.
Wow,
So
it's a lot. One of the things that I was going to ask you too is, I've been in tech all my career. So I've only had one career. You've had two now. If anybody here is thinking of like changing careers, is there any life advice you would give?
Well, do you want me to give the Samsung line or
No.
For me, I think everybody's got a different situation. I've made a couple of different transitions and have had to kind of look in the mirror and understand and be honest with myself: is this fulfilling? Am I being learned? Am I learning? Am I challenged? Do I respect the viewpoints and opinions of people I work with every day? All those different aspects. I've had to come through those. I didn't really have an option when I played in the NFL, although it was an amazing kaleidoscope of different individuals and personalities and everything else. So I think a lot of that becomes like really honest with yourself. Are you happy, and what's going to make you happy, and having a clear point of view, or a really, really strong gut feel of being able to do that, and then in the end not being afraid to do it, and then not looking back. All decisions are not final. Like the ability to change, however you want to change, and however it may be perceived from the outside in. It is what it is, but you've got one life. You want to give. You don't want to look back ever. I mean, this is like another piece too, where you want to look back ever and say, I wish I should have done that, and didn't. And opportunity comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes and times, and sometimes opportunity, and a lot of times opportunity comes when it's not good timing. Right. And that's just how it is. And taking all that kind of the really complicated mess I just talked about and packaging it up for like what's best for you. Good luck on that.
Anyway, let's give a round of applause to Isaiah.